It began with the birds. In the early days, no one noticed. A few flocks behaving oddly, spiraling in unnatural patterns over cities, their cries distorted like broken radios. Then came the disappearances, entire colonies of seabirds vanishing overnight, leaving behind only feathers scattered like cryptic messages on the wind. Ornithologists scrambled for answers, but none came. The world moved on, distracted by its own chaos. Then the lights arrived. At first, they were dismissed as auroras, brilliant streaks of green and violet dancing across skies where they had no right to be. Over deserts, over oceans, even over the equator where such phenomena were impossible. Scientists called it a geomagnetic anomaly. Poets called it the sky's lament. But those who stared too long into those lights spoke of something else. Whispers in their minds, faint and alien, as if the cosmos itself had leaned down to breathe secrets into their ears. The whispers grew louder. Reports trickled in from across the globe. People waking up in cold sweats, claiming to have dreamed of vast machines grinding through endless voids, or of eyes, countless and unblinking, watching from just beyond the stars. Psychologists called it mass hysteria. Governments called it disinformation. But the dreams spread like wildfire, crossing borders and cultures with eerie synchronicity. And then came the first death. It was a farmer in rural India who stumbled out of his fields one evening, his face pale as ash. He collapsed in front of his family, muttering a single phrase over and over in a language no one recognized. By morning, he was dead, his body drained of all moisture, as if something had siphoned his very essence away. Autopsies revealed nothing but a strange residue clinging to his skin, a substance that defied every test known to man. The deaths multiplied. In Brazil, an entire village was found lifeless, their bodies frozen mid-motion as though time had simply stopped for them. In Tokyo, commuters on a subway train were discovered with their eyes burned black, their expressions locked in silent screams. And in New York City, an entire skyscraper vanished overnight. Not destroyed or collapsed, but simply gone, leaving behind a perfect void where it once stood. Panic gripped humanity like a vice. Conspiracy theories flourished. Secret weapons tests, rogue AI experiments, divine punishment. But none could explain the growing pattern, the precision with which these events unfolded as if orchestrated by some unseen hand. The whispers and dreams became clearer now, no longer fragmented, but forming coherent words. Prepare. Prepare for what? No one knew. And then they made contact. It wasn't through radio waves or flashing lights in the sky. It was through us. People began speaking in voices that weren't their own, deep and resonant tones that echoed unnaturally in crowded rooms or across empty fields. They claimed to be emissaries of something called the Deathworlders, beings from a realm so hostile that life itself had evolved into a weapon there. They spoke of humanity's crimes, of ancient transgressions written into the fabric of space-time itself. You are an aberration, they said through trembling lips and borrowed tongues. A species born not to coexist but to conquer. Their message was clear. Judgment was coming. But humanity did not kneel. Even as fear gripped nations and chaos reigned in the streets, something primal stirred within us, a defiance older than civilization itself. We were not strangers to extinction. We had stared into its abyss countless times before and clawed our way back every time. If these Deathworlders thought Earth would fall without a fight, they had underestimated what it meant to be human. The first act of resistance came from an unexpected place, a small group of hackers who managed to intercept one of the Deathworlders' transmissions. What they found sent shockwaves through every corner of society. Coordinates for an invasion fleet assembling just beyond Pluto's orbit. The countdown had begun, but humanity was ready, or at least as ready as it could be for an enemy it barely understood. Fleets were mobilized. Scientists worked around the clock to decipher alien technology. Soldiers trained for battles they could scarcely imagine. And yet, the strange events continued. Cities found themselves plunged into darkness at random intervals, as if someone were testing Earth's resilience. Rivers reversed their flow, animals behaved erratically. Even gravity seemed to falter in certain regions. It was psychological warfare on a scale no one had ever seen before. A campaign designed not just to conquer, but to break us from within. But we did not break. Instead, we adapted, as we always had. For every skyscraper that vanished, we built two more fortified ones. For every whisper that sowed doubt in our minds, we shouted louder about hope and unity. And for every death that struck fear into our hearts, we remembered why we fought. Not just for survival, but because surrender was never an option. The Deathworlders thought they could confuse us with strange events and cryptic warnings, but they had underestimated one simple truth. Humanity thrives on chaos. And so we waited, not with dread but with determination, for the day when their fleet would finally arrive at Earth's doorstep. When it did, we would show them what it truly meant to be alive. The Deathworlders arrived on a Tuesday. It was almost poetic, the banality of the day clashing with the enormity of the event. For all their psychological warfare, for all their cryptic messages and cosmic displays, they chose an unremarkable morning to make their move. The skies above Earth split open, not with fire or thunder, but with silence. Their ships emerged like shadows peeling away from reality itself, vast and angular, their surfaces blacker than the void between stars. They hung in the atmosphere like harbingers of inevitability. And then came the voice. It wasn't broadcast over radio waves or hijacked satellites. It was in our heads. Every human on Earth heard it simultaneously, a cold and emotionless declaration that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the soul. We are the Deathworlders. Your time is over. Panic erupted in every corner of the globe. Crowds surged through streets. Governments scrambled for answers, and militaries prepared for a war they had no hope of understanding. But even as chaos reigned, there was something else, a flicker of grim determination that refused to be extinguished. Humanity had been warned, after all, and humanity had prepared. The first strike came from orbit. The Deathworlders' ships unleashed beams of light that didn't burn or explode, but simply erased. Buildings, vehicles, entire city blocks vanished in an instant, leaving behind nothing but smooth craters and stunned silence. It was as if reality itself had been rewritten, piece by piece. But for all their technological superiority, the Deathworlders had underestimated one thing. Earth was not a passive target. The counterattack began within minutes. From hidden silos buried deep beneath mountains and deserts, humanity's missiles roared into the sky. They weren't just conventional weapons. These were the fruits of desperate innovation, warheads laced with experimental tech designed to disrupt alien systems. Some carried electromagnetic pulses strong enough to fry circuits across continents. Others were packed with nanites programmed to infiltrate and dismantle anything they touched. Most of them never reached their targets. The Deathworlders' ships shimmered with strange fields that bent physics itself, deflecting projectiles as if they were no more than raindrops against glass. But not all failed. A single missile found its mark, a lucky shot or perhaps something more, and one of their smaller vessels erupted in a cascade of violet fire before spiraling into the Atlantic Ocean. It was a small victory, but it was enough. Across the world, humanity rallied. Fighter jets screamed through the skies, their pilots pushing themselves to the limits of endurance as they weaved between beams of annihilation. Ground forces mobilized in cities and countrysides alike, armed with everything from cutting-edge railguns to improvised explosives. Civilians joined the fight too. Engineers hacking into alien signals, doctors setting up makeshift hospitals and subway tunnels, even children carrying supplies to those on the front lines. But it wasn't just technology or tactics that kept humanity fighting. It was something deeper, something primal. The Deathworlders may have been stronger and smarter, but they lacked what made humans truly dangerous: humanity itself. The first ground assault came in New Delhi. Deathworlder soldiers descended from their ships like specters, tall and lean figures clad in armor that seemed to shift and ripple like liquid shadow. Their faces were eerily human, but wrong in subtle ways. Eyes too sharp, smiles too cold, movements too precise. They moved as one, a perfect machine of destruction that swept through streets with ruthless efficiency. But they weren't prepared for resistance. The people of New Delhi fought back, not just soldiers but shopkeepers, teachers, mechanics, anyone who could wield a weapon or throw a stone. The Deathworlders' superior strength and speed gave them an edge at first, but humanity's sheer unpredictability turned every street into a battlefield and every building into a fortress. Improvised traps brought down towering invaders. Coordinated ambushes overwhelmed squads that thought themselves invincible. And then there was fire. In one desperate act of defiance, a group of engineers rigged an entire district's power grid to overload just as a wave of Deathworlder reinforcements advanced through it. The resulting explosion lit up the night sky like a second sun and sent shockwaves rippling across the city. When the dust settled, dozens of alien bodies lay scattered among the rubble, and humanity had its first true victory on the ground. News spread like wildfire. From New York to Nairobi, from Moscow to Melbourne, humanity learned that these invaders, these so-called Deathworlders, could bleed. And if they could bleed, they could die. The battle for Earth had only just begun, but already it was clear. This would not be an easy conquest for either side. The Deathworlders may have come with superior technology and physical prowess, but they faced an enemy unlike any other. A species that thrived on adversity, that found strength in chaos and unity in despair. As dawn broke over smoldering cities and shattered landscapes, one thing became certain. Humanity would not go quietly into extinction. If these invaders wanted Earth, they would have to fight for every inch of it. And humanity? Humanity would make them pay for every step they took. The Deathworlders underestimated us. They came with their fleets, their weapons that bent the laws of physics, and their cold, calculated precision. They came to erase us from existence, to claim our planet for profit, and leave nothing but silence in their wake. And yet, for all their technology, for all their strength, they had forgotten one fundamental truth. Humanity does not break. The battle raged on for weeks. Earth became a crucible of fire and defiance. The Deathworlders unleashed horrors we could barely comprehend. They poisoned the skies with nanite swarms that devoured metal and flesh alike. They unleashed seismic weapons that turned cities into rubble with a single pulse. They even tried to turn our own planet against us, manipulating weather patterns to create storms so violent they tore apart entire regions. But we adapted. We always adapt. When their nanites swarmed our cities, we countered with EMP bursts that fried them midair. When their seismic weapons shattered our infrastructure, we rebuilt stronger and faster than they could destroy. When hurricanes and tornadoes ravaged the coasts, we learned to fight not just the invaders but the very elements themselves. Humanity's ingenuity became our greatest weapon. Every attack they launched was met with a countermeasure born from desperation and brilliance. And then there was the resistance. It wasn't just armies that fought back. It was everyone. Farmers turned their fields into minefields. Hackers infiltrated Deathworlder networks, turning their own drones against them. Artists broadcast messages of hope across the airwaves, reminding us all why we fought. Even children played their part, carrying messages through underground tunnels or helping to construct barricades in the streets. The Deathworlders couldn't understand it. Their species had long since abandoned individuality in favor of collective efficiency. To them, humans were chaotic, disorganized, a rabble of irrational beings clinging to outdated notions of freedom and identity. But that chaos was our strength. Where they saw disorder, we saw creativity. Where they saw weakness, we found resilience. The turning point came in orbit. For weeks, Earth's remaining space forces had been waging a desperate battle against the Deathworlder fleet. Our ships were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with a ferocity that no machine could match. Pilots pushed their vessels beyond their limits, using every trick and tactic to exploit even the smallest weaknesses in the enemy's defenses. And then came the Chimera. It was a prototype ship, humanity's last gamble, a Frankenstein's monster of alien tech salvaged from fallen Deathworlder vessels and fused with human engineering. It shouldn't have worked. By all rights, it should have torn itself apart the moment it launched. But it didn't. Instead, it became a symbol of everything humanity stood for, defiance in the face of impossible odds. The Chimera led a daring assault on the Deathworlder flagship, a behemoth so massive it cast shadows over entire continents as it hovered in low orbit. The battle was brutal and costly, Dozens of human ships were lost in the attempt. But the Chimera reached its target. Its crew, volunteers who knew they would never return, rammed the ship directly into the flagship's core reactor. The explosion lit up the sky like a second sun. With their flagship destroyed and their fleet in disarray, the Deathworlders faltered for the first time. Their perfect machine of conquest began to show cracks as humanity pressed its advantage. On the ground, resistance forces launched coordinated assaults on key alien strongholds, driving them back inch by bloody inch. But even as victory seemed within reach, humanity knew this wasn't just a battle of weapons. It was a battle of will. The Deathworlders tried one final gambit: psychological warfare on an unprecedented scale. They broadcast images of Earth's destruction across every screen and device, showing simulations of cities reduced to ash and oceans boiled away into nothingness. They whispered into our minds again, promising annihilation if we didn't surrender. But humanity did not waver. Instead, we responded with our own broadcasts. Images of families rebuilding shattered homes, soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder on burning front lines, scientists working tirelessly in underground labs to find new ways to fight back. We showed them what it meant to be human, not just our strength, but our stubborn refusal to give up. And then, they left. It wasn't an act of mercy or defeat. It was cold pragmatism. The Deathworlders weren't used to prolonged conflicts. Their conquests were usually swift and decisive. Earth had cost them too much, too many resources, too many lives for too little gain. Humanity had made itself more trouble than we were worth. Their ships vanished as silently as they had arrived, retreating beyond Pluto's orbit and back into whatever dark corner of the galaxy they called home. But before they left, they sent one final message. You are an anomaly, a species that thrives where others would perish. You have earned your survival. For now. And just like that, they were gone. The aftermath was devastating. Billions dead, entire nations reduced to ruins, but humanity endured. We mourned our losses and honored our heroes, but we also rebuilt. Slowly but surely, cities rose from the ashes stronger than before. The scars left by the invasion became reminders, not of our suffering, but of our resilience. And though the Deathworlders had retreated into the void, we knew this wasn't over. Somewhere out there in the vast expanse of space, they were watching us, waiting for another opportunity to strike. But next time, we would be ready. Because if there was one thing humanity had proven beyond any doubt, it was this: no matter how advanced or powerful an enemy might be, you do not mess with Earth. Not now. Not ever. When the Deathworlders fled, they left behind more than devastation. They left a scar on humanity's collective psyche. The billions of lives lost, the cities reduced to ash, and the knowledge that such an enemy could return at any moment lit a fire in us. For the first time in history, humanity was united, not by fear, but by purpose. We would not wait for them to return. We would hunt them down. The effort began immediately. Across the globe, scientists, engineers, architects, and inventors convened in what became known as the Vanguard Initiative. These minds, once divided by nations and industries, now worked together with a singular goal: to build the ships that would carry humanity into the stars. Not as explorers or settlers, but as avengers. The first challenge was propulsion. Our current technology was insufficient for interstellar travel, let alone pursuit of an enemy that had already demonstrated faster-than-light capabilities. Drawing from salvaged Deathworlder tech and decades of theoretical research, humanity's brightest minds developed a hybrid propulsion system. It combined nuclear fusion with elements of alien gravitic manipulation, a system capable of reaching speeds that would have been deemed impossible just years before. The second challenge was survivability. These ships wouldn't just be weapons. They would be homes for their crews on journeys that could span decades. Borrowing concepts from generation ship designs like those proposed in Project Hyperion, the new vessels were envisioned as self-sustaining ecosystems. They would feature artificial gravity through rotation, bioregenerative life support systems for food and air, and radiation shielding so advanced it could withstand even the harshest cosmic rays. But these weren't just generation ships. They were warships. Each vessel was armed to the teeth with weapons designed not just to match, but to surpass Deathworlder technology. Railguns capable of firing projectiles at near-light speeds, energy weapons that could disrupt molecular bonds, and swarms of autonomous drones programmed for adaptive combat. All of it integrated into sleek, modular designs that could be upgraded mid-mission. Construction began in orbit above Earth. Massive shipyards were assembled using materials mined from the moon and asteroids, a feat made possible by the rapid advancement of space infrastructure during the invasion. Thousands of workers labored tirelessly under the watchful eyes of military strategists and civilian leaders alike. The flagship of this fleet was named Retribution. It was a marvel of engineering, over 5 kilometers long, with a hull composed of hybridized materials derived from Deathworlder alloys and human ingenuity. Its interior housed not only weapons and crew quarters but also laboratories, manufacturing facilities, and even hydroponic farms. It was a city in space, a fortress designed to carry humanity's vengeance across the stars. As construction progressed, so did intelligence gathering. The Vanguard Initiative repurposed Deathworlder communication devices left behind during their retreat. Through painstaking decryption efforts, they uncovered fragments of data, coordinates that hinted at the location of Deathworlder colonies and staging grounds deep within uncharted space. But this wasn't just about technology or strategy. It was about spirit. Humanity had always thrived under pressure. The same defiance that had carried us through wars, plagues, and natural disasters now fueled our determination to confront an enemy far beyond anything we had faced before. Artists painted murals on the sides of orbital stations. Poets wrote verses about Earth's resilience. Musicians composed symphonies that echoed through shipyard halls. And then came the call. When Retribution was finally complete, its engines humming with barely contained power and its crew standing at attention, the leaders of Earth broadcast a message to every corner of the planet. We will not wait for them to return. We will not cower beneath their shadow. We are humanity, and we are coming for them. The launch was a spectacle unlike anything in human history. Billions watched as Retribution and its sister ships ignited their engines and ascended into the void. Cheers erupted across continents. Tears streamed down faces both young and old. For all our flaws, for all our divisions, we had achieved something extraordinary: unity in pursuit of justice. But this was only the beginning. The fleet's journey would be long and perilous. They would face challenges no one could predict: hostile environments, unknown alien species, even internal conflicts among their own ranks. Yet they carried with them more than weapons or technology. They carried humanity's indomitable will. As Retribution disappeared into the blackness of space, leaving Earth behind as a distant blue, one thought resonated among those who remained. The Deathworlders had made a grave mistake when they invaded Earth. Now, it was our turn to invade theirs. The Deathworlders' homeworld was a distant speck in the cosmos, hidden deep within a galaxy humanity had only glimpsed through telescopes and dreams. But we found it. It took decades of relentless effort, reverse engineering their technology, deciphering their cryptic coordinates, and building ships capable of crossing the void. And when we arrived, we didn't come in peace. The fleet emerged from hyperspace like a storm breaking across a tranquil sea. Humanity's finest ships, sleek, bristling with weapons, and humming with the power of nuclear fission and fusion, descended upon the Deathworlders' planet with a singular purpose: vengeance. There was no warning, no negotiation. The Deathworlders had taught us that mercy was a weakness they would exploit. So we answered their invasion of Earth with the cold calculus of annihilation. As the fleet entered orbit, the flagship Retribution broadcast one final message to the surface: "You should have left us alone." And then the bombs fell. The first strike was surgical, targeting planetary defenses, energy grids, and communication hubs. Deathworlder anti-orbital systems fired back, but they were no match for humanity's relentless assault. Railguns launched projectiles at near-light speeds, piercing through shields and armor as if they were paper. Swarms of autonomous drones descended like locusts, overwhelming ground forces and dismantling infrastructure with mechanical precision. But the true devastation came from above. Humanity had perfected nuclear weaponry during its darkest days on Earth, and now that grim expertise was unleashed on an interstellar scale. Thermonuclear warheads rained down from orbit, each one carefully calibrated to maximize destruction while minimizing fallout that might spread to neighboring systems. The Deathworlders cities, once towering monuments to their technological supremacy, were reduced to glowing craters in seconds. On the surface, chaos reigned. The Deathworlders fought back with everything they had, deploying advanced mechs, bioengineered monstrosities, and even experimental weapons that warped reality itself. But for all their strength and intelligence, they were unprepared for humanity's sheer ferocity. Where they relied on precision and efficiency, we brought unpredictability and overwhelming force. The final blow came when Retribution deployed its most devastating weapon, the Hammer of Dawn, a massive fusion-powered orbital cannon capable of unleashing energy equivalent to a small star's core. Its beams sliced through the planet's crust like a scalpel, triggering cataclysmic earthquakes and volcanic eruptions that tore the world apart from within. As the Deathworlders' planet crumbled into dust, humanity watched from orbit, not with triumph or joy, but with grim satisfaction. This wasn't just revenge. It was a message to any other species that might consider Earth an easy target. But even as the fleet prepared to return home victorious, there was an unspoken truth among the crew. This war had changed us. We had become what we feared, a force capable of erasing entire civilizations in pursuit of survival. The line between defender and destroyer had blurred, leaving us to grapple with what it meant to be human in an unforgiving universe. As Retribution turned away from the dying embers of the Deathworlders' homeworld, its captain recorded one final entry in the ship's log. "We came here seeking justice, but found only ashes. They called us an anomaly, a species born to conquer, and perhaps they were right. But if this galaxy wishes to test humanity again, let them remember today." And with that, humanity began its long journey back to Earth, a world forever changed by its first steps into the stars as both victim and victor. In the silence of space, as stars blinked in distant galaxies yet unexplored, one thing was certain: humanity would never wait for another invasion. We were now hunters in a universe that had once hunted us. The Deathworlders' homeworld was gone, reduced to dust and memory. It was a testament to humanity's wrath, a scar carved into the galaxy itself. The fleet returned to Earth victorious, but there were no parades, no celebrations. The stars had changed us. We had stared into the abyss, and it had stared back, reflecting something we were not ready to see. The cost of vengeance was not just measured in the lives lost or the resources spent. It was measured in what we had become. For centuries, humanity had defined itself by its resilience, its creativity, its defiance in the face of impossible odds. But now, for the first time in history, we had become the aggressor. We had not just defended ourselves, we had obliterated an entire species. And so, we withdrew. The great shipyards that had birthed our interstellar fleet were dismantled. The weapons that had turned a planet to ash were locked away in vaults buried deep beneath the Earth's crust. The Vanguard Initiative was disbanded, its scientists and engineers returning to civilian life with haunted eyes and heavy hearts. Humanity turned inward. We rebuilt our cities, restored our ecosystems, and mourned our dead. But even as Earth healed, a shadow lingered over us, a collective unease that could not be shaken. The stars, once symbols of wonder and possibility, now seemed cold and indifferent. They reminded us of what we had done and what we might do again if provoked. Generations passed, and the memory of the Deathworlders faded into legend. Children learned of them in history books, stories of a race that dared to challenge humanity and paid the ultimate price. But the lessons of that war were etched into our very DNA. We would never again seek conflict among the stars. Exploration continued, but cautiously. Humanity ventured into nearby systems, establishing colonies on barren worlds and mining asteroids for resources. But these efforts were always tempered by restraint. Every new discovery was met with the question: what if we are not alone? The fleet that had once carried humanity's vengeance now lay dormant in orbit, a silent reminder of our capacity for destruction. The Retribution became a museum, its halls filled with artifacts from the war and plaques bearing the names of those who had fought and died. It floated above Earth like a ghost ship, a relic of a time when humanity had been pushed to its limits. And yet, for all our caution, there was hope. Her civilizations rose and fell in distant corners of the galaxy, some peaceful, some violent, but we did not interfere. The lessons of the Deathworlders remained with us. Power without purpose is a curse. And so we waited, not for war or conquest, but for understanding. Perhaps one day another species will find us, a race curious enough to seek out our stories, but wise enough to avoid repeating them. Perhaps they will look upon Earth not as a target or an anomaly, but as a kindred spirit, a world that learned through pain what it means to coexist in an unforgiving cosmos. Until then, humanity remains vigilant yet humble, a quiet force among the stars, content to let time pass without conflict. For we have learned this truth above all others. Survival is not about domination or revenge. It is about knowing when to stand firm and when to let go. And so we wait beneath the shattered veil of stars, guardians of our world and stewards of our future, hoping that when history remembers us, it will remember not what we destroyed, but what we chose to preserve.